Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make my cookie dough fudge. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. I have had a cookie dough fudge recipe on my blog basically from the beginning, but over the years I have really honed in on it and perfected it, and I am so excited to be sharing my final perfected version with you today. Now before we begin, we want to make sure we have everything ready to go. This includes our pan and our ingredients. Now for the pan, you're going to need an 8 by 8 inch square pan, and I highly recommend lining the pan with either parchment paper or aluminum foil. I prefer to use parchment paper, and it can be kind of a pain to work it in there, but I want to make sure I have a nice strong crease so it doesn't fight me when I'm pouring the fudge into the pan. And I like to have a little bit hanging over the edges so that it's easy to pick up the fudge after it's cooled completely. You're going to need 2 cups of white chocolate chips, and I recommend using a quality brand of chocolate chips. Sometimes I have issues if I use certain brands. Today I'm using Ghirardelli. It's just what works best for me. I don't work with Ghirardelli or anything. It's just what I use. You'll also need a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. Biggest mistake most people make is they use evaporated milk, so make sure you're using sweetened condensed. You'll need 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I recommend cutting this into 6 pieces and letting it soften a little bit even before you begin. A half cup of brown sugar. Now light brown sugar will work for today's recipe, but I prefer to use dark brown sugar, so use that if you have it. 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and we're gonna come back to this flour in just a minute. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 cup of chocolate chips. You can use mini chips, you can use regular sized chips. I like to personally use a blend of both of them. Okay, let's jump back to that flour real quickly. So for today's recipe, we're going to be cooking our fudge. It's going to be getting heated. But in order for flour to be safe to eat, it has to exceed 160 or 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Otherwise, there's the risk of contracting E. coli from it. We don't want that, so to be safe, I really recommend you heat treat your flour. This is really simple to do. You can pop it in the microwave. For me, it usually takes 20 to 25 seconds. And then I just use an instant read thermometer just to make sure it has exceeded that temperature. We have exceeded that temperature, so we are good here. But because we've heat treated our flour, it's gonna have the tendency to clump a little bit. We want this to stir smoothly into our fudge, so I recommend having a fine mesh strainer ready as well. That way we can pour the flour through that. It's just going to make sure everything combines nice and smooth and you don't have any lumps in your fudge. All right, let's head over to the stovetop now, where you're going to need a medium-sized saucepan. Now let's combine our chocolate chips and our can of sweetened condensed milk. Get that all in there. We'll also add our butter and our brown sugar. And this is firmly packed brown sugar. Anytime I have you using brown sugar, I pretty much always am making sure you firmly pack it before using. Now turn your stovetop heat to medium-low, and we're going to stir this constantly until the butter and the chocolate have completely melted. You really don't want to walk away from this. You don't want anything burning to the bottom of the pot. You just want to make sure everything gets nicely melted together. All right, once our ingredients are nicely melted together, we're going to go ahead and add our flour. And since we heat treated it, we're gonna put that strainer right on there, and we'll just pour our flour through that. And you can see how it's trying to clump a little bit. I'm just gonna use a spoon to break it up and force it through there. And then once I have all that added, I'm just going to start stirring it in. And then I'm going to add my vanilla extract, which is 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and my salt. We'll stir everything together. Now at this point, I'm just gonna turn off the heat completely. I'm actually going to remove it from the heat, and I'm just going to stir this a couple seconds longer. Now, if your fudge is starting to harden and solidify, you're going to want to move on to the next step and add your chips, but mine is still pretty hot, so I'm gonna let it cool down a little bit before I add the chocolate, and I'll show you why in a second. Now, once I add these chocolate chips, they're going to start melting pretty much instantly. So you have to be ready to move at once. Now, I have my pan ready, so I'm going to add most of my chocolate chips. I reserve about 2 tablespoons for the top, and I'm going to immediately give this just a couple stirs, just a few. You don't want to overdo it or you're gonna end up with an all chocolate fudge, and then immediately pour this into your prepared pan. And I hate that I can't turn this towards you. I'm just not strong enough. It's too awkward. I don't know, but I can't. I wish you could see it coming out of the pot instead of seeing the back of the pot. All right, we didn't make it a completely chocolate fudge. We have the nice chocolate ripples through it. This is looking beautiful. You can get a little bit more out of that pot. And I'm going to gently smooth the surface where it needs it, because you really don't want to overdo it, because what you can end up doing is just completely melting your chocolate and ending up with a chocolate fudge. Not that that's the worst thing. Now those extra chocolate chips that we saved, we're just going to scatter those over the top, Just toss them on. You want to do this while it's warm. You can gently nestle them into the surface if you'd like. And there you go. Now this fudge needs to cool completely before you can enjoy it. Usually this takes several hours. I do have a pan that I prepared last night, so let's go ahead and dig into that right now. And you can see with our parchment paper, it makes it super easy to lift this right up out of the pan. You can see this is a nice solid fudge. When you bite into it, it's gonna be nice and creamy. It still has that great fudge consistency, but it does make a nice solid fudge. That's what I love about this recipe. All right, look at that. Look how beautiful that is. You can see the chocolate swirls, which I love. It has the perfect cookie dough color. That is how easy it is to make this cookie dough fudge. I hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you try this one out, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Just melts in your mouth. You're gonna love this.